Literally everything inspires me. And yet, I hate to be told what to do. Two conflicting ends of my personality. There are many, many different conflicting polarities of my personality, but that's just one of them. And with spirituality in particular, it's been an interesting process for me. I was just asked recently, I talked about being something of a spiritual seeker to somebody, and they asked me, "Oh, like what kind of spirituality are we talking about?" I was like, "It's not really denominational. It's kind of just Joe's way of doing things." But to categorize it as that is, I think incomplete because it's Joe's way that is influenced and inspired by a whole bunch of different spiritual teachings, a whole bunch of different spiritual avenues. If I had really solidly knuckled down and honed in on one, then I would say that. If I was only referring to Zen Buddhist teachings and I was following that, I would say, Zen Buddhism. If it was strictly Taoism, I would say that. There's been a handful that have sort of been put into my arsenal. And then, I don't know, earlier this year, I found one called Sufism. I think I'd heard the name before, but I'd never really learned about it till I listened to this audiobook called Love is a Fire and I Am Wood. And, man, it just lit me up, and I was super inspired to be like, man, maybe I'm a Sufi. I say that one particularly because that's probably the most recent one where I was like, maybe that could be this discipline that I strictly focus on among everything. But like all spiritual practices that I've read about, I've been extremely inspired by it, wondered if I should make that my sole sort of devoted path in having spiritual awakening. And then, I kind of moved on from it. Not moved on from it in terms of like shut it down or say, oh no, that was misguided, that I even wanted, to follow that in the first place. Just be like, hey, I took some core principles from that, and it's just getting thrown into my little pot of spiritual experience. It's one of a handful of things, not the only thing. And I have to ask myself the question often of, is that a good thing or a bad thing that I've gotten so many interests? My goodness, my nose is being runny today. 1 second. So many different spiritual interests, and not really solidly committed to any one of them as my firm discipline. That's not just spirituality. That's a whole lot of me, is that I want to learn, and I get excited by just about everything. But it can kind of make you that sort of jack of all trades, master of none in the real world. So I wonder if I'm a jack of all spiritual trades and a master of none. I don't really have the answer, but I also don't think I can really brute force that kind of a change in myself, because every time that I do get solidly focused on, I'm just going to follow this path, this one particular path, this one area of spiritual teaching, I immediately feel this kind of resentment toward that kind of teaching. When I feel like that is absolutely what I must do as my 100% spiritual practice. It starts feeling like it's just sort of the spiritual boss of me, and I grow resentment toward it, and I start to sort of veer away from it. I've had fantasies in the past sometimes about maybe going to one of those Zen monasteries or just some other sort of live-in spiritual school of some kind. But I do wonder if I would develop resentment toward that entire school's teachings, just the same as the principle itself. I don't know, but I can tell you that the appeal of going to one of those things is it is sort of the same thing that I would resent about it, which is the rigidity of it. The solidly disciplined regimen of you wake up at this time and you do this thing for this many hours at this exact time every day. And you do it in line with a whole bunch of people. The same way that sometimes as a kid I would look at, portrayals of military school on the TV, and I'd be like, man, I feel like I would hate that, and I also feel like I would gain so much from being in a program like that. Because I do sincerely hate being told what to do. Being told that you must strictly do this one thing and you can't do all these other things. But I need at least some level of that, or else I don't get good at anything. But then I also feel like I sort of have been able to transcend the whole model of getting good at something in spirituality and just in life. I feel like I have strongly cultivated Joe's way. Joe's Tao, you could say. Because I have a method of spiritual exploration that incorporates essences of Zen Buddhism and yoga and shamanism and Taoism and all the like. In a way that I don't know if I could really teach to somebody else. Because it's all just been me following my natural impulse from one area to the next. And I feel like I've had some level of spiritual, you could call it, success from just following my natural impulse. In any case, I feel very spiritually fulfilled, even not having solidly disciplined myself in any particular avenue. There's just so much that goes into spirituality, which is why it's such a hard topic to define. So many different facets of it. But weirdly all leading to the same sort of destination, which is just an unhampered knowledge of what is. I sometimes wonder if you just removed the concept of spirituality and any sort of, quote, spiritual practices, and you just let people live an infinite amount of time, would everybody just become enlightened? Because in many ways, life itself is the greatest spiritual teacher. Because it's the only teacher that is purely experience-based, not inference of secondhand knowledge from some other kind of teacher. Yeah. I don't exactly know. I also remember last year telling somebody that I had written a novel, my novel, The Wooden Ball, that I independently published last year through Third Eye Sockeye, which is my publisher, great one. And I was telling somebody that had spiritual themes to it, and he was like, "Oh, what kind of spirituality?" I was like, "There's not really a spirituality that it, like one specific one that it falls into." And he was like, "Okay, that's odd. Isn't that so interesting?" We've so much just associated spirituality with the organizations, the big organizations that promote it, when that becomes just as dogmatic as any other kind of organized religion that a spiritual seeker might not have fond feelings toward. The bottom line is that no matter what school of spiritual discipline or thought you subscribe to, you're still only following your individual way. And those schools are only good in as far as they lead you to your own independent realization. Yeah. So, go ahead and have your labels, but also understand at the end of all of it that what you are is completely label-less and unable to be labeled. I love that I ended with a stupid rhyme.